Hello and welcome to Socialist Night Live. Tonight we are here with Thomas Barlow and Charlotte Austin, and we are going to talk about how we challenge the ridiculous media narratives that we are forced to listen to all the time, and that for some reason, people who believe that vaccines are a conspiracy theory absolutely accept that someone like Jeremy Corbyn was simultaneously a boring person who dug an allotment all day, whilst also being a Czech spy and also being in the IRA. So that is the kind of thing we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be challenging that. Many of you will have been sitting watching Thomas's interview. So Thomas has joined us. So you'll need no introduction for those people, but introduce yourself for those people who haven't had the privilege.
Hi, I'm Thomas Barlow. I work with the Independent Media Association, which is an association of 50 independent media organisations. Charlotte is in one of those organisations, Red Pepper. You might be aware of it. You might be aware of other partners like Squawkbox or Novara Media, The Canary, Evolve, things like that. We're trying to bring people together and actually coordinate and protect our sector and make sure that we can create a better media. So that's what I do. But also, if you watch the last episode, you'll know that I am an anarchist and therefore not necessarily always the favourite or darling of social shows. But thank you for bringing us on, man, because I don't bite.
We're quite happy to have you on because we aren't like that. We don't exclude people for having a slightly different opinion to us. We're quite into the idea of different opinions. We like it, and we've also got someone who's also done an Origin series show, Charlotte Austin, and you're here. Well, you tell us who you're here representing.
Hi, yeah. So again, thanks for inviting me on the show. It's always a pleasure to be on Socialist Think Tank, as I have a handful of times now. So I work for Red Pepper magazine. We have existed since 1995, and our aim is to provide a kind of anti-sectarian sort of thoughtful, reflective space for writing on socialism and politics from a national but largely an international perspective as well. So this is it's Red Pepper for those of you who don't know. So I am looking forward to talking tonight about our attempts to kind of break through the media narratives and also just the very rigid, very hard to break into media landscape, I suppose. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, you're always welcome on here. Right, and you will notice down beneath me is a person's name, and that's Laura. Laura, as you know, always gets the short straw or the long. It depends. It depends what you think's better, putting your son to bed or working this. So, so she'll be joining us very, very shortly. We'll be talking about a number of different things. One of the things we're talking about as well is we're going to talk about the situation with Paul Williams. I do want to wait for Laura on that one because I want the women on the show to lead that one because there's been some very dubious tweets uncovered. And the newly anointed prospective parliamentary candidate for Hartlepool, so that'll be quite interesting. But I'm going to go back to Thomas for a little while. So you spoke about anarchy in the show quite a lot. So just for those people who missed it, a really brief description of what anarchy is and where it differs, because I think there were a lot of people who related to what you said and didn't think it was very far at all from what a lot of people consider to be socialism.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I'm probably a particular type of anarchist that could be called a libertarian socialist, and famous anarchists like Noam Chomsky would, or even David Graeber would consider themselves in that sort of same bracket. But it's quite a wide-ranging thing, and where it differs from socialism. Well, one is in the way that anarchists describe themselves. So they don't like follow Lenin or Trotsky or Gramsci or whoever it is. It might be Paul Foot or what's his name, Tony Benn. People call themselves Bennites. Anarchists never really name themselves after a philosopher or a particular political leader because fundamentally anarchism is against political leadership in that way. Everyone is their own leader. And so, therefore, the philosophy of anarchism might be anarchist communism or anarchist socialism, or there might be anarcho-environmentalism, anarcho-feminism, minarchism, which is like the idea of, or municipalism, which is, again, a socialist idea of government at a municipal or local level, or other ways like that. So one key element where it differs is that distrust of leadership, of power structures, where it's not where taking leadership is wrong. It's that then taking leadership and then giving those leaders all the power, making them unaccountable, undemocratically controlled. That's really important. The main thing, though, and James Meadway did a thing on this, is around the state. The split between socialists and anarchists goes back to the First International. It goes back to Marx, and it goes between. Typically, prior to that point, everyone who was an anarchist or socialist agreed that you can't use the state. You can't get involved with it. It is a violent institution. It is the police, the army, and the prisons. You take away everything else, you've still got a state. If you take away the police, the army, and prisons, you've got a failed state, right? But you don't have to have healthcare or education. You just have these violent institutions. So why would you take it over? If you want a free and equal world for all, why would you take over these violent institutions to impose that on people? And as we could have seen, for all the advances state socialism has made, whether that's social democracy or sort of revolutionary Leninist socialism, for all the achievements it's made, it's ultimately ended in oppressive socialism, an oppressive form of government. And that anarchists oppose that as much as, or to nearly as much as capitalist, destruction and imperialism and all the other sort of oppressive systems we have to overcome. Ultimately, socialists who follow that route tend to become the oppressors rather than liberators. And what we're talking about, liberators, is being free. We want to be free. So anarchists focus on freedom. How do we be free? We need to be equal. We need to not have violent institutions oppressing us. And we need to create a world, and it'll only work in a world level, where we are in a classless society, a stateless society, one where we're, free and equal. And getting there is slightly different as well. Mainly that we think global whilst organising locally, and ultimately the only way we think we'll see an anarchist society realistically is a global revolution, even though there will be anarchist experiments like in Rojava in northern Syria on a small scale. There'll never be a true anarchist revolution until there's one on a global scale. That's as brief as I can make it for.
It was pretty brief. It was much briefer than our interview. But the interview, there was time for that.
It had to be.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really identified with when you were saying it is it's like it's not a world without rules. It's a world without rulers, and I found that really, really interesting, because that's always been my philosophy. Whether I've been in a trade union, when I've been a trade union representative, I thought my authority always came from the people who told me what to do, and I went in and I've said things that I don't agree with, and I've done it time and again, because that's the kind of person I am. I'm democratic. I've represented points of view that aren't mine, and that's what you have to do if you're a representative of people. And that's what I would do, I suppose. Like, that's what I've done as chair of Sedgefield CLP. I've represented positions that I don't actually agree with, because that is what you have to do in a democracy. And it's interesting that isn't the widely accepted thing to do. Like, we've had a lot of people who've always said to us, you've got to, oh no, actually, once you're an MP, or once, you're not accountable to the members, you're accountable to the constituents, and they have told me that they want me to make the decision. And you're like, so you're accountable to no one? Yeah. And I've seen that quite a lot of times, but that's one of the things I really enjoyed. We've got a question in from Ray Goodspeed straight away there. Ray was going to also, like, was going to sub in for tonight as well if we couldn't get anyone tonight. And Ray's an absolute brilliant person from Lesbians and Gay Support the Miners, who's also had an interview on here. How do anarchists take the power off the ruling class, dealing with their police and military? And once you've taken power off them, what do you do with it?
Well, I mean, that's actually the question that socialists have got to answer as well. The socialists try not to answer that question. They say, well, actually, we just won't take the power off them. But the reality is that those very forces are what ultimately always brings down every socialist experiment. So it's a question that actually all socialists need to answer. Now, anarchists have various ways of looking at this. What you were talking about there, being a delegate, Paul, is like, that's anarcho-syndicalism. If you're going to work through the workplace, you represent direct democracy at all points. And again, we don't believe in a representative system, but direct democracy. But yeah, to come back to the question, if you want to get rid of the police, we have to destroy those institutions. Now, a great example is defund the police, right? A great example, as a sort of libertarian socialist, as an anarchist socialist, I can believe in incrementalism as long as they're the right kind of reforms. So let's work on creating a world where you slowly but surely erode the power of the police by highlighting their corruption, by outing them, by putting democratic control over them, by taking their money away from them. And you do the same thing with the prison system, and you do the same thing with the military. And that means, working towards creating global peace movements that push for peace, global anti-racist movements that push for anti-racism, global anti-incarceration movements that push for the abolition of incarceration in prisons, right? And we're all working on those things across the world. Those happen. The Anarchist Black Cross is a very strong global network that supports political prisoners around the world. It's that kind of thing. So those are the pushes. So, here's another important thing to say, that like, we're not going to get a perfect world tomorrow. It's not fucking Etch-a-Sketch. We don't just shake it and go, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll get like rid of all of these fucking wankers and jobs are good. And the important thing is to know that that's the aim. And as I said, socialists have given up on that being the aim. And that's devastating. That's really dangerous. You have to believe that this is the aim, to get rid of the police. And I've seen socialists oppose defunding the police. I've seen publicly attacking BLM for making ridiculous, untenable demands or being against law and order. And certainly you see that from the right of the Labour Party and things like that, but even from left Labour people. And that's dangerous. We have to see them as the enemy and work on those reforms. And we'll come up with those decisions together democratically. Along the way, we'll come up with more and more solutions. But defund the police is a classic example of that. And the prison abolition movement that's opposing private prisons. Also, change the laws so that less people end up having to go to prison. First thing we could do is end prohibition. That would be a great start. Can we disarm nuclear weapons? Can we push for a decrease in military budgets in all countries? Yes, we can defund the military as well. So you can lead institutional boycotts against weapons companies, etc., etc. So this would be a process. And that process, in taking on that process, we learn how to create a better society. Because as long as we do the process democratically, instead of us going, you, sir, you sort it all out for us and we'll follow you wherever you go. If we all do it together, we'll learn together how to make a better world from that. And we'll make some cock-ups, but we will get there. I honestly believe we will.
Charlotte, I'm going to bring you in at this point. I'm going to start you off on answering anything Thomas has said there, and also what I want you to follow on with is we're going to move on to the media stuff. So you're going to answer that, please, and then we're going to go to the red pepper, and you're going to explain what red pepper is. I'm a subscriber. You made me be a subscriber, and I'm very grateful for that because it's dead good. But I did, and just so people know, I did do it because of you as well, because you were very good at telling me how good it was. So,
thank you.
Yeah, go.
Nice to know that I'm succeeding at work to some extent.
You're a super influencer. That's what you are.
Thank you, Paul. Just want to come in on Thomas's points about like state socialism or I consider myself to be a democratic socialist, so I do support the idea of a state, but one where, democracy is not just having an election once every 5 years, but a really fundamental part of the way it's organized, and that has to include industrial democracy. I'm a big firm believer of. But I think it is a very important question to consider. Socialists can't just take control of the arms of the state and expect it all to work neatly, because firstly, they are quite repressive institutions, the majority of the institutions of the state. It's what are you going to do with the army when you take control of it? And then there's also kind of like the question of what will happen with the people who are in these institutions. Will they all be happy that a socialist government has come along and got into power through whatever means? Probably not. So you're going to have a lot of like angry army generals to deal with and stuff like that. You know, it's actually a minefield of a question. But yeah, I think that idea does suppose quite a neoliberal model of the state, though. Like, I think the state can work to much better aims. I think, you know, if you take a look at Soviet Russia, they needed a strong state to be able to organize the industry that propelled Russia from like agrarian poverty, you know, like 80-90% people working on farms, to like one of the most enormous industrial powers, like, you know, of the 20th century, like rivaling America for power and influence. Obviously that's not the question for today. We don't want to have more industrial superstates and stuff like that. We want to do something about climate change, which is why I think we need to think about solutions that are quick, because it's not gonna go away. Like, we need to act now on climate change, which is why I think the only option is to seize control of the state and make the state do green stuff. And yeah, just kind of like that. I think, you know, the fight against climate change has to be central, and that means we can't just kind of like hope that everyone
Yeah, climate change is the number one thing. It's got to be the only priority this decade. It should have been the only priority for the past 2 or 3 decades. But what we should be aware of is a couple of key things about climate change. First and foremost is it's a global problem, and that's going to require a global reaction. There's no way that you can stop, for instance, entire oceans being depopulated by trawlers when they're fair game for everyone, and you can't come up with an agreement on an international basis. And nation states have had a long enough period of time, and they've known about this since the 70s, to come up with a response. There has been no effective socialist takeover of the state to respond to the climate crisis as of yet. The responses that we've seen that have been at all effective have been global movements, such as the ones against fracking, the ones against extractive mining, the ones to protect the Amazon rainforest. And that's acting in solidarity across the world. And they're people's movements who fight against the state. They're not within the state. Those people's movements win more ground because the state at its best, as I mentioned in my other thing, is a weather vane. It goes where the wind blows, and the people need to blow the state in the right direction. If a socialist leader took control of this state, as we were aware with Corbyn, generals threatened to coup him straight away, right? as you mentioned, what happens is that it occurs when socialists take over the state is a form of siege socialism, where they have to enact more repressive measures to attack dissidents. Right-wing and left-wing anarchists get killed as well. They have to spend a lot of their resources and time dealing with civil wars, or even in a social democracy, they have to appease the imperialist state. Clement Attlee was one of the most brutal imperialists of the 20th century. Okay, so ultimately, you're not going to stop racism, you're not going to stop climate change, you're not going to do it through the state. And what we've learned through the 20th century is it is not the vehicle to do that. More importantly, in the 21st century, even if it potentially was, even if some of the things in the 20th century had worked, states don't have enough power. A nation state cannot control Amazon. A nation state cannot control Facebook or Google. We're seeing that already. There are global corporations and they require global movements. So around about 88% of climate emissions are caused by around about 100 companies. Our job as a people's movement is to attack those companies, is to change and reform those companies. If we could get a Green New Deal, that would be fantastic. And I will be campaigning for it all through this year. But again, that will be a reform that is one from without the state, not within. It will not be by having Jeremy Corbyn in power. It will be by having Keir Starmer or Johnson agree to that policy. Mm-hmm. So the task is to recognize the state as the enemy and to work with that knowledge to still create reforms, urgently needed reforms. So it's not a wishful thinking or like, I'd love a world without police and blah, blah, blah. It's tactically a necessity. I'd actually love to be a socialist because in some ways it seems like, or a state socialist, because it seems simpler. You follow a leader, you do what you're told, you follow the program, we'll all get it right. It'll all go right in the end. Unfortunately, it's more complex than that. We're going to have to work together to build broad-based people's movements with the majority world, because the majority world is where the working class is, to create the change. We need to act in solidarity with the people who are on the front lines, the indigenous people who are dying, the people of colour who are dying at the hands of climate change right now.
I'm sensing here that like there's a lot of agreement here in what the priorities are, and a slight disagreement in how best to go about it. But there was a big agreement from you, Charlotte, there when you mentioned about when Thomas mentioned that we're going to have to get Keir Starmer or Boris Johnson to agree with that. And while you have establishment figures in charge, is that really going to happen? Which brings me neatly segued into, right, so what do you do for Red Pepper? And let's start talking about the media, because that is the only way we're going to have an opportunity to really change things, is if we start changing people's minds. That is how we create this pressure that is going to get these people who want to get elected, for whatever reason that might be. If they want to get elected, they are going to have to do things that are popular with people. And how do we make things popular with people in the current system? So what is Red Pepper and what do you do?
Okay, thanks. So we're a quarterly magazine. We base things thematically. So this quarter's issue is, the title is, just going to get the magazine for visual purposes, People, Power, Place. And we've got articles about the Paris Commune, because it's 150 years since the Paris Commune, and municipal politics more generally. We have a section on 100 years since partition of Ireland. And we've got a culture section, which is about rethinking home in a pandemic. So like we do the politics, the bread. We also do the roses, the culture, because socialists deserve to have nice things, and sometimes to do stuff like think about TV programs in a kind of left-wing critical light. So that's generally what we're about. I think one of the things that really kind of drew me to Red Pepper is how genuinely non-sectarian we are, and everyone likes to say that they're like, inclusive and stuff like that, but like, we have a very wide range of authors, from tankies to trots to whatever, who might write for Red Pepper. I don't think you'd really be able to characterize our authors in any way. And the coverage of international issues is really important to us as well. Like I think we try to avoid a national focus as much as possible, with the recognition that, as Thomas said, politics happens on a global scale. It's unavoidable, and focusing on single nation stuff is just, I don't know, a bit intellectually reductive. But yeah, so that's what we do. I think another kind of one of the principles of Red Pepper is that we try and support emerging writers and give space to grassroots organizations and movements to write articles and get their profile up. Like one statistic that actually manages to shock people despite like what we know about the industry is that like 80% of editors of newspapers or magazines are privately educated in this country. About 40% of journalists are privately educated. It is one of the most elite and impenetrable fields out there. And I think a lot of that's because you need a lot of like, if you want to be successful as a freelance writer or journalist, you've got to take a risk in putting yourself out there. So you need a lot of cushioning, like whether that just be like, you know, already having an income, you know, having the time to be able to do the writing. And obviously that puts a pressure on like women and disabled people and people who, you know, otherwise have these pressures on time and resources. So yeah, I guess one of the things we do is like, you know, pay people for writing articles. That's still something you find quite hard to come by in a lot of outlets. But yeah, we pay people to write articles and just generally try and get the widest range possible. Like a lot of our writers aren't like, you know, seasoned journalists or people with, you know, glittering careers and big profiles. We're trying to be a lot more accessible than that. So yeah, that's Red Pepper, and we're trying. We're not a massive organization, but we are. We've been around for a long time, and I think people trust us for that reason.
Thomas, you tell me about what you do in the media as well, and then I think what we'll do is we're going to talk about the challenges that we face, and then we'll outline how we do it, how we go about facing those challenges. Because I'm about solutions. Let's get to them.
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring that up because you asked the question, you know, how do we change minds? And the reality is probably we don't need to change many minds because the majority opinion is on our side on every policy issue. Like the majority of people agree with us on everything that we think about, except probably capital punishment, where like a lot of people think we should kill people or give that power to the state, which is, you know, I'd have that debate. But we don't need to change people's minds. What we need to do is give people options. And that's what Red Pepper does fantastically. It's worthwhile, you know, reading people who are suggesting solutions, because why do people pay attention to the news more around elections than any other time? You know, 5 years, especially when it's a dry period like 2010 to 2015, people just stop paying attention to the news. They just don't bother, because you can't do anything about what you're learning about. There's no point in learning about why the world's shit if you can't do something about it. And apparently you can't do anything except for when you vote. That's how moribund our democracy is, right? So our media needs to be solutions focused. It needs to give also people information about what's properly a problem in the world, because obviously we have to remember this, the problem of the media as it exists isn't Laura Koonsberg awful, or isn't, you know, like the editor of The Sun an awful human being. They are objectively, and they're disgusting, you know, but the reality is it's structural. Billionaires own our press, the state own our broadcasters, big tech is also owned by billionaires. All of our information comes from people who have a vested interest in keeping us divided and angry and ill-informed. And they produce media that does just that. It divides us, it keeps us angry, and it keeps us ill-informed. We don't know what's going on in the world. And when we do, they attack them. Declassified UK, who are a partner of the Independent Media Association, uncovered many corruptions of the UK government. No one's doing anything about foreign policy like these guys. Check them out, follow them. They do 3 articles a week. Each one will blow your mind.
and recently showed that the British government supported the coup government, the Bolivian coup government. And then the Forest Office called them disinformation. And they said, mate, we took the information off your website. Like, this isn't state secrets. But guess what? The establishment media aren't reporting on that. They're not even going to the Foreign Office website and copying and pasting, right? So it's not even for a lack of resources, which journalism is under-resourced. It's because they have a vested interest in creating a system where people don't do their jobs or ask questions about certain things. And they do ask questions about, why are migrants coming here in boats? Why do poor people spend their money on alcohol and things like that? And that's the journalism they create. And that gives us a skewed sense of priorities, because we think, well, there must be an epidemic of people on the dole getting battered. Do you know what I mean? And so that's an institutional problem. Now, how do we overcome it? I can tell you, but I didn't know whether you wanted to open that up as a question. But let's remember that these are institutions. These are big organizations, and they're set up by the elite to keep us divided, ill-informed and angry. And then and the first step is not allowing ourselves to be ill-informed, angry and divided.
Okay, so I think I am going to ask that question. I'm going to ask it to Charlotte, because I know we did touch on this in the interview, and I know you've got a very well formed opinion on this. I'm sure Charlotte has too. So Charlotte, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to combat this?
I think we need to get more serious about building a left media that's fit for purpose to challenge the disinformation and to get the left-wing message out there. One thing that's going on at the moment, has been going on for a really long time actually, is the complete decline of print media. And that does kind of present us with an opportunity, because it's a lot more expensive to set up and print a newspaper than it is to set up and proliferate a website, a blog, a podcast, that kind of thing. But definitely on the web front, one of the things that we've kind of been saying for a while at Red Pepper is that the left needs to just get a lot more serious, or certainly organizations like ourselves, this is a bit of self-criticism, need to get more serious about like reaching new web audiences outside of our usual kind of like, people who follow us on Twitter and their friends and blah, blah, blah. We need to get serious about things like search engine optimization, getting up that Google search list and playing those kind of evil algorithms that underlie a lot of the internet stuff, and trying to beat them at their own game, I suppose. So yeah, I think like with left media, there are different organizations that fulfill different purposes. Red Pepper's never going to be like a kind of like, snappy, responsive, something's happened and we're going to write an article about it straight away and be the first people to write that article. Ours is more about like, overviews of things. We do like, essays, stuff about history, that kind of stuff. Like some of the things that like some of our most hit pages are stuff like, reassessing the myth of the 1970s, which was the whole like the trade unions have ruined the country kind of stuff. It's that kind of like critical thinking kind of stuff. But then you also need your left-wing organizations that do that. I'm not going to say clickbait because I think that's mildly derogatory to what these organizations do, but like that responsive, quick, immediate news, like the Canary kind of does a lot of that. And I think they do quite a good job with like breaking through on the internet as well. So maybe one to look at. But so building a robust left media, one that is thoroughly democratic and gives people an opportunity for participation and ensures that marginalized voices are championed, people who are out there on the streets doing the politics get their stories heard, and so on and so forth. I think left media is only what we ourselves make it. We're not going to find a friendly billionaire to do away all of our financial troubles. It's all about like ourselves vesting an interest in left media by financially supporting it, writing for it, sharing it, and so on.
Yeah.
So on that note, I'm going to mention something, and you mentioned to do with understanding algorithms and what have you. Now, we on Socialist Think Tank, we notice something. People tend to stick with us. So when people are watching, they tend to continue to watch. So that shows that we've got a really, really loyal audience. What's not happening is we're not getting very much random, like we're not popping up on someone else's timeline somewhere. We're not doing that kind of thing. I think the only way that we can be really successful is to be socialist, like do socialist media, if you like, get everyone involved, and actually everyone, like, so we could do an experiment now. Actually, everyone can just share this stream and see if that boosts the number of viewers for that, and what have you, or comments, or does something on this stream to see if like these algorithms work. Because what I'm noticing at the moment is it isn't particularly working. And I think what Thomas said in his interview as well was we need to get off Facebook within 6 months, because I think capitalism is getting much more wise to the fact that it could still be used. It could still be used as an anti-capitalist thing. It could still be used to bring down capitalism if we wanted to, and they're going to cut down those lines of communication. So Thomas, is that what you meant by the idea that we need to get off Facebook within 6 months?
Yeah, if you know Adam Smith, he did a study of a sugar plantation on an island. It's a 25-year-long study, and what he shows is capitalism always tends towards a monopoly. The plantation owners all had equal plots to begin with, but over the course of the years, someone gets into debt, someone in their family gets ill, and as that happens, someone buys up their stuff. And by the end of the 25 years, you've got 2 or 3 people who own the whole land, right? And that's what's happened with the internet. It's gone through a 25-year cycle, and you see it begin with the advent of Internet 2.0, which is the Facebook, Twitter era in about 2009, 2010, when they really become global. We've now got a global communication system now, which is the internet, and we now have global media. It does exist. When you buy a phone in Africa, it is automatically loaded with WhatsApp and Facebook automatically, and people have mobile phones more than they do landlines because that infrastructure was never built. So yes, it is rapidly becoming aware it's a publicly traded company that it needs to protect the interests of its class, of what it does, and it doesn't want to be regulated. It doesn't want to lose money. It doesn't want to spend money on like deciding who can do what. So if it just does a deal with the existing establishment media and says everyone else can fuck off, it politically wins because it doesn't want any of these lefty upstarts anyways, and it gets governments off their back, and people can stop moaning about it. Look, we give you the Daily Mail. There was what was there already. That's what they're going to do. We have to move beyond that. We have to start getting back onto email lists. We have to get onto Telegram channels, which is what the far right do in the tens of thousands. Or hundreds of thousands of people on their Telegram channels. You can have 500,000 people on a Telegram channel for free, right? We need to be sharing our broadcasts that way, directly communicating with people. It'd be good to build up phone trees or text trees again. One person texts 3, and that's what we all do to get things going. And we need to go back to those old ways. Those phone trees work to organize the poll tax riots. They still would work. Now, I'm doing some stuff on building some solutions, which I can tell you about now or at the end or whatever. But those things are practical things that like media organizations can do now and that people can participate in. So for instance, Declassified UK, you can join their Telegram channel. I don't think they're the only ones. I think Canary might have one. I think a couple of others. So now you can just start getting your news in your inbox, boof, in a secure location that isn't owned by a global mega corporation that's going to fuck you over.
Charlotte, where does that get? I think that's really interesting, Thomas. I'd like to come back to like what your ways of getting around that are as well. Or was that the Telegram stuff, or was that just part of it?
No, I'm working on some stuff with the IMA that's very big, but I recognise I talk a fucking ton, and I apologise for it profusely. I try and find a cadence where I finish on the point, but I don't want to,
Yeah, I'm just thinking, Charlotte. We know a little bit about solidarity. You know, we know about like backing one another up. Should media channels be doing that? Like, should every single media channel be backing one another's media channel? Because, like, say on Socialist Think Tank, we've thought a few times, why are you going out when we're going out, when we swapped our slot out of yours because we didn't want to do that? So why aren't we getting reciprocal solidarity? Is it just daftness, or is it what is it? You know, do you need to go out in a block, or you know, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, other than just to say spot on, it is crucial that we work together on this. And, you know, Red Pepper does that a lot. We organised an event with Repeater Books quite recently, like Left Wing Publishers, another great one to work with. But yeah, I do think there's a problem where, like, you know, we don't talk to each other enough, especially like the media organizations. Like, you know, Red Pepper, we talk a lot with like publishers, we talk a lot with the Left Book Club, that kind of thing, but maybe less so with ourselves, I suppose. Like, but yeah, I don't really know how to answer that other than it would be nice for us all to work together a bit more. I'm well up for that. And I think a lot of it, you know, is just that there are old publications, there are new publications, there are, you know, some media outlets do one thing, some do another, and I guess it's quite hard to see eye to eye sometimes.
Do you think as well, like, we're a bit, I don't know, I think some of the left media is a little bit male and a little bit 50. And that's I don't know how appealing that is to people. You know, like, we try to do something. Obviously, we try to do something here. And by the way, when people shared that, more people did watch, and now we've got more people who are paying us some attention. So yeah, it does work. But we try and do something a bit different. We've got a different look to the show and things like that. You know, like, do you think people now, after such a long time, are a bit bored of just Zoom shows and people talking about how crap it is to be in the Labour Party? You know, is that, have we had enough of that now?
Yeah, I think like lockdown Zoom fatigue is a real thing. Like at the start of lockdown, I found the whole kind of like online event thing very novel and exciting, especially being in like the northeast of England, as you'll know, Paul, kind of like cuts you out of going to all the best events and stuff. When I lived near to London, it was like amazing, just the amount of stuff I could drop in on, and you did feel like a hell of a lot more connected to other people in London versus the rest of the country. But yeah, by now I think people are just like very tired of looking at a screen all day. I know, like, if I've been sat at a screen like working all day, I don't really fancy watching like a Zoom call all night sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I get your point about like diversifying. Like, maybe the media is too, you know, white man in his 50s talking about the Labour Party. Like that's something definitely to move away from. But yeah, and I think like groups that are doing well at the moment are definitely like going on that diversified route. Something I remember from like earlier on in lockdown was Queer House Party. I don't know if anyone like went to some of their Zooms, but it was like really fun. There was music, stuff like that. I think is a good way of getting the message out. But yeah, in general, I think we all can't wait to get back to physical events.
I think maybe it's a touch, like, I suppose I mentioned a bit male and 50. It's maybe also a bit London as well, and that's another thing that we try and deal with here. We don't just speak, like, we speak to people from London. There's some great people in London, but it's not just about London. It's never just about London. I think people need to see some representation from their own communities and stuff. Thomas, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll first point out to the audience that I'm a Midlander, I'm not a Southerner, because if you're all Northeasterners, I was going to call you Geordies or Mackhams or whatever, but if you're all from the Northeast, you probably think I'm a Southerner. I'm not. I say grass for starters, so go fuck yourselves. Secondly, Um, I live in Manchester, though I'm moving back to the Midlands and moving back to Stoke. I do have a posh accent, but what can you do? And I'm white and old, and people shouldn't bother listening to me, to be honest. But I appreciate it when they do, because I need the fucking ego boost. Honestly, I'm sat in a room going fucking balmy. Like we. The media that I consume isn't moaning about the state of the Labour Party. I'm not involved in those arenas. What socialist media, especially left Labour media, needs to do is start taking go to ima.press. Check out all of our partners. It ranges from liberal to anarchist. And if you follow, and a ton of it is left Labour leaning. But if you follow things like Real Media, they do 2 or 3 videos a week that are about protests that people are undertaking and have been throughout this entire period, whether it's against HS2 or Palestine action or environmental action. And we should be talking about those things. What we need to do is start talking about other independent media that other independent media are producing. And we need to start setting the agenda instead of reacting to the establishment media. Let's not talk about fucking Meghan Markle. They can all fuck off as far as I'm concerned. It's irrelevant, and we know it's irrelevant, and that's what we sit around talking about it. The fucking world's dying, but people are doing something about it. They are out there. There are strikes going on right now. There are people winning workplace struggles. That is occurring. We are winning stuff. We need to talk about that, and we're losing, but it's close. People are fighting, so we gotta get into that arena and start talking about those things. Play those clips, clip that up. I'm going to start a show with a mate of mine from Liverpool, and we're gonna start doing that kind of thing. But I encourage everyone to do it who's on the left, and I think we can take a lot of succor from that. I want to get into the Labour question at a certain point, but I really want to tell you about the IMA at a certain point as well. So just 2 things to mention.
Well, I'm going to talk about the IMA now as well, because I think we will speak about that, and hopefully Laura will be coming on. This is the longest ever putting to bed that has happened in the history of humanity.
Nah, you've not been with me, mate. I'm an absolute shit.
But there's a couple of things, a couple of people in the chat. Obviously, like the chat is such a big part of this show, and it's great to have like the chat coming down the side here. A couple of things in there. We've got Ray Goodspeed saying he says grass, and we can still F ourselves. So that's good. Another thing I should have mentioned as well has been White and 50. It's pretty much straight as well, and we need more like I suppose queer people talking about things that are not just about queer issues. You know what I mean? Like I think that's an important thing that came out of Ray's interview, because you're just a normal human being, and why do you always get asked about the same thing? Like, oh, we've got a gay person on, let's talk about being gay. No, they have so many other things that you have opinions on, and that's something we also try to do as well.
Could I come in on that?
Of course
just
you can,
very
yeah.
briefly? There was a site that was set up by people of colour called Media Diversified, and they created an entire database, which we're hoping to replicate to the IMA and build it out beyond this, of people of colour who were experts on everything. And they consistently complained of being asked to talk about race. It's not actually their problem. We should be talking to other white people about race. Like, we should be saying, listen, man, stop being a dick. Are you fucking kidding me? Right, like that. We're supposed to be taking that conversation to each other, right? It shouldn't be their burden. They've already got enough shit as it is. And also, this is a wealth. You should see this contact database, hundreds and hundreds of incredibly talented, smart individuals who are thought leaders in every subject under the sun, right? And they're getting asked what it's like to be black. Like, that's a piss take, man. Come on, we can do. And I was going to say we can do better than that, but it's the establishment media that are doing that, and we need to change things like that.
Absolutely. So loads of comments around the Labour Party as well. It's not Zoom, it's the endless depressing talk about the internal turmoil in Labour for me. It's important, we need to talk about it, but sometimes it feels all-consuming and hopeless, whereas the Socialist Think Tank shows talk about other things and positive things that we can do outside of Labour too. I think that's, it's not just about the Labour Party, is it? The Labour Party is one tiny part of socialism, and at the moment that's very questionable as whether it plays any part in socialism whatsoever at the moment. But let's hope it can do one day again. That would be nice, because there is an electoral purpose. We do have to work within the system. You always got to work within the system you're in, even if you want to change it, because otherwise it's just fantasy, isn't it? You've got to try and engage with the system that you're in, even if that's just to get rid of it. Kat Cray there, she's a health and safety rep who's a lesbian, and it can be exhausting just talking about being a lesbian all the time. I think that's what she is referring to there. And Kat's been on the show as well for the Women's Banner Group Week. It wasn't the Socialist Think Tank show, but she was absolutely outstanding there. Ray mentions a great victory for cleaners in, I'm going to terrible French for L'Eritrea school, girls' school. Won their demands. Well done, United Voices of the World. So, these are the good news stories that we need to be telling each other. That's a really important thing. So, you ready to go for it, Thomas?
Yeah, I saw a comment from Carl Alexander Rosser, who said he asked a question at the MRC panel and he got a dismissive answer, but I don't know what the question was. So, Carl, if you can, because I missed it on the things, if you could re-put that question, I'll try and give you a non-dismissive answer. I don't promise it won't be dismissive. I might be a complete dick. Yes. So the IMA, which is the Independent Media Association, ima.press, is going to do 5 key things that I think are really important. And Charlotte, I'm hoping that you and I can have a sit down after this, because often I've approached Hillary, I think, who's far too overworked. And that's the first thing to say. Most independent media organizations are unpaid and overworked, and that's why we don't work together. It's not ideological differences. It's literally we don't have the capacity. Like, I was working as an Amazon warehouse worker, a year ago. Like, I've during 6 years of organizing independent media, and I've barely ever been employed by it. Like, I've almost always had a shit job, and most people have as well. So we've got a problem insofar as people think that media should be free and they should get it for free. But of course, if the people aren't paying for it, then the elite are paying for it, and we know what they want, right? Like, so we've got to start changing our attitude. We've got to recognize that media costs money. And so the first thing that we're going to do is the IMA is going to build a funding body that will get in money from the trade unions. The leadership have finally shown some interest in supporting independent media, from charities, from individual donors, and maybe local trade union branches, or CLPs. So if you're in a CLP or a local trade union branch, get in touch, because in the next 6 weeks, we'll have a funding body set up that will basically bring in the money and then disperse it in 4 ways. 1, to existing independent media. 2, to independent media. 3, to specialisms such as workplace reporting, environmental reporting, and investigative reporting. All of these things don't get done. And 4, for bursaries for people from working class and diverse backgrounds that don't get to work in the independent media, or in fact any kind of media, right? We need to bring that money in and distribute it. And the problem has been in the past, apart from the fact that our sector is actually quite young. Red Pepper's old, but most organizations are 5 years or younger, is that if a trade union gives money directly, it can be seen as influencing the editorial line. So what we're trying to do is create a Chinese wall so that money can come in. Secondly, we're going to build resources. So like that database I talked about, Media Diversified, put speakers on, put shows on, show when shows are on. We'll make sure that we stream every show through the IMA socials that is on. So if Socialist Think Tanks becomes part of the IMA, then it will go in the calendar and on that stuff. There's also grassroots Labour grassroots are setting up something called the Radical Times, which will put everything in like a Radio Times, but for radical people. So that will be a resource. It will also have training, social media, SEO. How do you do this? Who are the best people? Free legal advice, free accountancy advice, because there's a bunch of shit that we didn't know, because capitalists don't teach you how to fucking run an organization in case you actually become dangerous, right? So that's number 2. Number 3, we're going to create a comms hub that helps us coordinate our messaging so that we set agendas rather than reacting to agendas, right? Number 4 is setting up an influencer network in marginal constituencies, so local influencers in marginals, because that's where the political power lies. And we need to do some shit quick, because this environmental crisis is fucked. So we need to get people in place now so that even if we're not running the Labour Party, and as you know, I'm not interested in running it, we can still go to Keir Starmer and say, listen, mate, if you don't do the Green New Deal, we will savage you. We will savage you in 30 to 50 marginal constituencies, and we're going to do it for a year, and you'll be fucked. If you want power, give us this, right? That's how we have them. That's how we create power. And the fifth and final thing is Bywire. Bywire News, which I'm moving to work for, is creating an app that puts all the independent media in one place. You get a BBC News app, but it's a Bywire app, and it puts all of it in one place. It gives you the opportunity to tip, to make your own news feed out of all this best quality independent media. Instead of you having to open up 20 tabs and find them on Facebook, which they're all getting kicked off of, etc., etc. So we're building those things. Now, we need money. I'm still working part-time for the wage of a day a week, right? I don't care about me. I'll do it, right? But like these things, the tech costs money to make. These institutions, the organizations take time, cost money to take, and we don't have that much time. And we're getting an opportunity that in August, we're working with a very prominent figure, I can't say who will launch all of these things to the wider world, to millions of people. Right. So we're building those in a very short space of time. That's coming. This is an exclusive for you guys. We haven't, internally this has been talked about, but this is the first time publicly anyone said anything. So I just wanted to let you know that that's what we're trying to do, because we're listening to all of those problems that people are saying, and I'm trying to get some shit done. So sorry, that was a long, and I apologize again.
I'm going to bring in Charlotte in a moment, but there's a couple of things I want to address on that one. So we as an independent, independent media, we are almost breaking even now because we've got members who are willing to donate, which is absolutely brilliant. But if you do want to become a member, we don't have a hierarchical structure. We have so anyone can go and become a member of Socialist Think Tank. There are private forums in there that we can talk about things on. There's WhatsApp groups, and we do have a chat, and it's becoming quite a nice community feel in there. But you can join that for free, but you can choose to donate as well, which is always massively appreciated. So that is a really big deal for us. But the other thing I want to talk about is you on this show have already had someone from the RMT who was going to come in and speak on your behalf about an affiliation there. So we've got Kat Cray, who from the RMT is willing to do this, which is
Quality Union.
Yeah, they are. Do you know what? And she was also saying that she was really pleased that they didn't affiliate to the Labour Party. And you know what? I kind of really get that. It's a. They are one of the. I think they are probably one of the unions that are stronger for not doing that. They're a really high quality union that we think the world of. So RMT, we absolutely love you. And, if you ever wanted to donate to Socialist Think Tank as well, we would accept that donation gladly. So
spend that Labour money.
Yeah, spend that money you would have done on Labour.
We're going to encourage all
she's telling us not to go Galway and us, so I'm going to shut up now. So Charlotte, how would that help? So in Red Pepper at the moment, people can subscribe to Red Pepper and they get a really, really good deal on that, don't they? The quality of Red Pepper, the articles do stand the test of time. You're not time sensitive. That's one of the things I really like about. That's one of the things I really like about Red Pepper. I can go back to it. I've got back issues that I can go back and be like, well, that's still relevant. It's still a good article. So what do you think? How would that help Red Pepper?
Yeah. So, Thomas is saying, almost everything in the independent left media relies on a lot of unpaid labour, which is depressing because, it's annoying when we can't adequately reimburse somebody's time because we all have to wage labour to survive in this cruel world, and it does kind of make the playing field a bit uneven. But having that money will certainly having more consistent revenue streams would really help Red Pepper properly reimburse all of our contributors, editors, people who just do other stuff. Like it is quite like overwhelming the amount of stuff that needs to be done just to run an organization of any size. But like, Red Pepper's kind of a medium-sized, I would say, left media organization, and there's so much like finance and admin, and it's mind-boggling, like just the amount of stuff to keep it ticking over. So yeah, and another thing that Thomas said is that if it's important to remember that if it's not us funding left media, then it is the elites in essence. Like it, we don't have. I would love it if we had loads of left-wing billionaires. Obviously, that's quite a it's an oxymoronic concept. You don't become a billionaire by being left-wing, but like if we didn't have to rely on working people, people on low incomes giving up their very kind of scarce resources to support us. But I think one of the things that I'm really glad you enjoy your subscription, Paul, and you feel like that's good value for money. I suppose we have a kind of pay as you feel structure where people could pay £2 a month if they want to, or like £6 a month if they can stretch to that. But yeah, it is like we spend so much time fundraising, I think, as Red Pepper, and if that could be done, like if that could be made easier, then that will free us up so much for like political activities. And the more secure our revenue becomes, the more we can have a better website that automates things, and like that'll free up my time that I spend at work doing boring admin to do the exciting, collaborative, creative stuff that we all want left-wing media to do. So yeah, I think one of the things that shocks me about the trade unions is like a lot of them give money to stuff like the New Statesman, which is like, yeah, fair enough, but like you could be doing so much better if you put those resources into like proper independent left-wing media. So I think the trade unions will be massively rewarded by their investment in left-wing media to champion the stuff that they're doing and actually give it some good press, which I don't think the New Statesman would really do. No offense to the New Statesman, but like,
And trade unions also give a lot of money like to the Labour Party, but they don't seem to be getting that much back at the moment. So I think it would be in trade unions' best interest to support independent media, because we'll be the ones who'll be celebrating things like so we've got some more absolutely brilliant wins that are in there. Oh, what have I missed? I've missed something. So there was I can go back a little bit. I don't know if you can see it, but Cat Cray was talking about a win they got on for the RMT. But like trade unions winning and stuff, you can see this in the Morning Star as well. And you read the Morning Star, and I subscribe to that as well, because I do try and subscribe to a lot of different left medias. You get the bulletin out, and there's so many good news stories in there from around the world. Like the other day, it was about Spain doing the 4-day week. Now, I wouldn't have heard about that. There's no way the media in the UK is going to talk about Spain trialing a 4-day work week. Because it's impossible, isn't it? The 4-day work week is impossible. Just like UBI is impossible in Finland, and all these different things. They're not going to tell us those stories if they don't want us to have it. So yeah, I think I've just ranted on for a little bit. But
it's your turn, mate. It's your turn. Enjoy your turn.
It's I'm not really. I am a ranter. I am definitely a ranter. So I do apologise for that. So what do you think? Like, where do trade unions fit in with this?
Who's that to? Charlotte, I've chatted so much, mate. You have a spin, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting to that point on a Saturday night where I'm getting less and less coherent, but we'll have a stab. It is so much more exciting to read about workers struggling, coming together and winning things than the minutiae of Labour CLP gossip. And that, it does make for a lot better media. But yeah, the trade unions need a better vehicle, because such is the state of play in our, depressingly neoliberal state of being, that people just don't know how much a trade union could benefit them in their lives. They've heard all sorts of crap about trade unions, such as, the winter of discontent stuff in the 70s, and bringing the country to ransom in the 80s, all of these ideas. And we saw those when the teachers were threatening strike action over going back to school, that the levels of scapegoating and the painting of teachers as some sort of hostile and raggy, lefty, antagonistic force who didn't care about kids' best interests was all over the mainstream press. So there is a real battle to get the successes of the unions out there more into the public sphere, and to to have that popular awareness increase. And I don't think that can be done simply by just like hijacking whatever spots are gifted to us in the mainstream press, because fair enough, it is good that like Owen Jones has a Guardian column, for example. That's probably influenced quite a few kind of middle of the road liberal middle class types, and that's good. That's something, and it's good that there are people like Owen Jones who have these big public profiles and do occasionally get on the telly to talk on breakfast news about something and whatnot. But they're always going to be competing, they're always going to be side by side with articles from Nick Cohen, which describes the Labour Party trade union movement as some sort of evil death cult. So it's just not really tenable to do that. Another thing that reminds me of is the New Statesman. Again, there are lots of lefties who write for the New Statesman, but it's kind of a hostile environment for lefties to be in. For example, the New Statesman has a really rancid transphobia problem, just like the Guardian, and that's where these articles are going to be side by side with. Let's just have a media where we can set the agenda and be democratic about that, and essentially not have to worry about all the rancid centrist stuff that happens in these mainstream publications.
Speaking of Owen Jones, it's a funny one, because I do think we should support people in the left media, and including Owen Jones. I really do. But I wish I could just give him some advice on his interviewing style. And people have mentioned in here as well that we do, like Paul Smith mentioned, the left media needs to unite. Definitely agree with that. But if I was to give Owen Jones a piece of advice on how to interview people, it would be: don't wait for the opportunity for you to put in your opinion, because that's what it appears to be. It appears to be he's interviewing people and just waiting for his opportunity to put in his opinion. And, that's not an interview technique. You're not trying to find... You are not the subject. And I hope that the interviews that Socialist Think Tank do are never coming across that. It's always about the subject, because that's what people are tuning in for. They want to hear people, and they want to hear people in their own terms. So, yeah, I completely agree with everything you said there as well, by the way, Charlotte. Some absolutely brilliant comments coming in as well. The Guardian has not been a friend to socialism of late. I don't know whether it ever has, to be honest. If you look into the history of it, wasn't it a Liberal paper? Wasn't it a Liberal Party newspaper? Whereas the Herald was more the left-wing one, and that became the Sun. So they'll just buy up our media. I wonder if we'll ever be bought, and there'll be Socialist Think Tank talking about maybe we can have a page 3 where with fellas. But
You'll have an island in the sun, though, mate. It'll have all been worth it. Fuck socialists. You've got an island, right? Do you know what I mean? By the way, can I quick shout out Carl Alexander Rosser? He he mentioned this thing that he asked. I've been helping run the Media Democracy Festival behind the scenes, doing the live stream bit that you're doing, and he asked a question of Peter Jukes from Byline Times. He said, should the left media be cooperating more on broadcast live slots and times rather than competing, so we can get more involved in shows? And the Byline guy, Peter Jukes, turned around and said we don't need to all be on one channel, which wasn't the question. I think, to be fair, the chair kind of asked the question in a slightly wrong way, which is, shouldn't we all like get on one channel or something like that? So I think Peter reacted to it that way. But also, what you've got to recognise is, and I know Peter, and he's actually a super collaborative guy. And actually, Byline Times were sharing that event, and they will share actually a lot of people. They actually work with a lot of media. They want to see independent media succeed. But Byline Times at the very much at the liberal end of independent media. And independent media is financially independent. It is not homogenous. It's not left. We're not all going to put out the same message. The main reason the left looks divided is because we're trying to come up with solutions to problems, and there might be a lot of different solutions, whereas the right are only trying to maintain what already exists. So it's pretty easy for them to seem unified. We're coming up with different things, and what you find is liberals tend to do more journalism than the left. The left do commentary, and liberals like Byline Times, Declassified UK, quite radical actually. Who else? The Bureau of Investigative Journalism. They tend to actually write stuff that then people talk about. So he would, he might be a little bit like, well, I'm not sure if I want to be exactly on the same channel as everything, as socialist think tank, because we're not, but he's actually more collaborative than that, and he probably just didn't get the question. So that hopefully that comes back on that thing. And thanks for the comment, and thanks for watching the Media Democracy Festival. And if you haven't already, check out the Media Reform Coalition. They're campaigning to change what already exists. I'm trying to create alternatives, but they're trying to change the fucked up state of fucking everything. We've got Fox News UK coming, and BBC being absolutely riven with Tories, and Paul Dacre from the Mail. It's a shit show.
It's going to be a hoot and a holler, that one, I imagine. It's going to be hilarious. Imagine that one. Okay, we've just managed to get Laura. So poor Laura, you look like you've been through a bit of a battle. This is what happens.
You look great, Laura. Don't listen to this motherfucker. You look fantastic. You look like you just glided on ice into here.
She always looks amazing, but this is like, I can tell, I live with her, and I can tell when she's been through a little bit of a battle.
You can see what's behind the eyes. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is. So I think at this point, one of the things that we were going to talk about earlier on, and we did talk about how it isn't that great an idea to just bleat on about the Labour Party all the time, but there is a bit of a big news story going on at the moment, and that you had absolutely no idea of, did you, Thomas? Because to be honest, parliamentary democracy, is that really going to deliver what you want to deliver? Not really, I guess.
You're going to deliver what you want to deliver is the question you should be asking yourself. And I think you know what the answer is. I think you know what the answer is.
Definitely not have to do this. Definitely not have to do this. But anyway, so Laura, do you want to lead on this one? Do you want to lead on what the situation was and the backstory behind it? Because I think it's kind of important that we get a woman's perspective on this and how women feel about this entire situation.
Yeah, I can try. So basically, Hartlepool's MP has resigned, which should be innocuous, should be like, thank you for your time off your pop. But unfortunately, there are, I guess, darker issues at play. There were allegations of sexual harassment from the previous MP. I believe there's still like some sort of case going on about that. He was never suspended. Nothing really happened. There was a lot of, she's only saying it cause, all that sort of the usual stuff that you get. And it was quite upsetting, but also predictably shoved right under the carpet. And then so he's decided to resign. He's had that, luxury of going, do you know what, this isn't for me anymore. Rather than being shamed into leaving, which many think should have been the case. This is if that is all proven to be true. Obviously, we're in Socialist Think Tank, we're all about allegedly. we don't hold people to account on things they may not have done. But it does raise a lot of questions for the how the Labour Party run things and how they see the priority of MPs over women who may work for said MPs. There's a lot of I guess accountability that hasn't been taken there, and the optics of that look really bad. So anyway, moving on to present day, he has resigned, and I think the Hartlepool Labour Party was sort of, right, okay, let's do this, let's get stuck in, we'll have a look for a candidate the members want, and we'll campaign for that candidate. The applications were opened on a Tuesday afternoon and they closed on a Wednesday afternoon, so they had less than a day to submit an application, which was not very good for starters. And then there was rumours that someone was going to be parachuted in and all of that, which is becoming such commonplace in the Labour Party at the minute. It's not surprising at all. And then it seemed as if a gentleman called Dr. Paul Williams, you'll know he's a doctor because in all of his photo shoots he's got a stethoscope or his scrubs on, so you'll not miss it. And he was the only person on a long list. Not even the short list. He was the only person long listed. Make of that what you will. I'm sure my intonation tells you everything you need to know about my thoughts on it. But so there's a big question around democracy for starters there, a huge question, but also the fact that there's a load of tweets and things have come to light. For instance, somebody called it MILFgate. So let me read it for you. One of his tweets says, "Do you have a favourite Tory MILF? Mind-blowing dinner table conversation." Which is, sexist and misogynistic and ridiculous. I am very aware that people can make mistakes in their past and learn things. You've got to give people a chance to change. Otherwise, what's the point? You can't be born knowing everything. So there's got to be an opportunity for reform. Then he goes on to say, toggling between peripheral arterial disease management and Rihanna's Rude Boy video. Okay, fair enough. My favourite one is a picture of, I don't even know who it is because all I can see is her legs. It's a tennis player and her skirts come up because she's playing tennis. And it says, sudden interest in Wimbledon this morning. And they go on sort of like that. Now, this was a few years ago. So, and like I say, you've got to give people the opportunity to change. If you went back, I don't think I had a Twitter 10 years ago, but if I did, I'm sure there would have been some things on there that I've since been educated about. And so you've got to give people that opportunity. However, this gentleman doesn't appear to show any remorse. I think he's literally in the last day or something come out and apologized for one of the tweets. And also, at the time, his Twitter handle was Paul Williams Labour. He was in the Labour Party and active and doing things. Not to mention the fact that he's been actively campaigning and getting lots and lots of help on campaigning to be the Police and Crimes Commissioner for... is it Stockton? No, it's not Stockton, is it? Charlotte, no.
I think it's like Teesside in general.
Yeah, Teessidey place. For ages, they've been worked really hard. And is he going to still do that? Is he not? Is he? It's all it's all just a bit like, sod that. This is what I want to do. The Labour Party have gotten fully behind me. No questions asked. Let's just do it. And the Labour Party have parachuted him in. In my eyes, clear sexist, and the optics of that, especially right now, is just unforgivable. The Labour Party need to have a little bit more sense and a little bit more understanding and a little bit more caring when it comes to doing things like this. We all know that for a long time, the Labour Party have parachuted their own candidates in, and it appears that we're going back to that. No apologies made. So there's a lot of questions around this one, the complete lack of democracy on it and the sexism. I guess that remains to be seen how he's going to go forward with that. He has made an apology for one of the tweets. Good. I guess we'll see how he goes. I don't think it's been a hugely popular decision up here. I believe he was was he an MP for Stockton before? I've been told that he was pretty good on women's rights and he was pretty decent MP. But this just all feels a little bit grimy and a little bit not okay. For me, anyway.
Yeah, I think the thing that I find really quite reprehensible about it all is the long list of one. So what they're saying there is that there was not one woman good enough even to be like on a long list of the people who applied or could have applied. Obviously, only given them 24 hours to apply is wrong for a lot of reasons. But it really feels like a kick in the teeth, as it has done in other recent times, like in other elections where there's been a quick selection. I understand the need for a quick selection to get out there and start campaigning, but with this, it's just like, well, you go to your CLP meetings, you get everyone involved, you work through the institutions of the Labour Party, you go through that long and tiring and unpleasant at times journey. And then you still don't get a modicum of democracy or choice. And, obviously, I don't want to comment in too much detail on the Mike Hill allegations because it's not gone through the tribunal yet. The tribunal is set for May. But those were some very serious allegations. Like, if you read the full kind of report, it is some like very, very dark and serious allegations. And I remember at the time people jumping straight to not believing the victim, jumping straight to innocent until proven guilty, she had a vendetta, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And that's really bad. When you think about how the Labour Party's handled sexual harassment, like I've seen countless stories of people who suffered sexual harassment and sexual assault inside the Labour Party. And I think that is a problem. What happens when you give people power without any proper structures of accountability or any process for dealing with those kind of issues. So honestly, like the Labour Party really needs to deal with sexual harassment, because you don't want to be as bad as the Tory party. Like, that's just unacceptable. But in this whole charade, from like the not suspending Mike Hill in the first place or reinstating him without proper investigation, to the long list of one, and now obviously, like, as you completely rightly said, Laura, people should have the opportunity to make mistakes in the past and then learn from them. But like, I don't know, when it's 10 years ago and the guy literally made those tweets while he was at Progress Political Weekend 2011, so the conference for the right-wing faction of the Labour Party, like, you've got to know better at that time in your life. You're not a kid, you're not some like daft teenager who's saying edgy things for effect. You're literally a politician at a political conference, and that's like the sort of discourse you're going about. So it's been an absolute sham from start to finish, and I think Labour are going to get punished at the polls for this in Hartlepool.
And I was wondering what that Twitter handle meant, the PPW. I thought it meant something else that started with pervy, but yeah. So we've got a picture here of Paul Williams, and sorry for the panel, you won't be able to see it, but it's Hartlepool congratulating Paul Williams on being the candidate, and then it just like completely reminded me, and I hope I can get this to work, but hopefully this will work. Let's see.
Sir,
oh, there
excuse
it is.
me, sir.
There it
I'm
is.
sorry I
It
have
is
to
kind
wake
of
you.
working.
You a
It might take
doctor?
me a second to do so.
That's right.
but it's the classic thing of do you know the film Airplane? That's what it reminded me of. So where he says that where they're looking for a doctor. Let's see if I can do it. I shouldn't have done this, should I? I'll go back to this for a second, but I shouldn't have done this, but let's see if it works when I do it.
Sir, excuse
Oh, it
me,
does.
sir. I'm sorry I have to wake you. You're a doctor?
That's right.
Yeah, so hopefully that's giving some people a laugh at home. But like, why is he always wearing a stethoscope? And also, you can just say he's a doctor. You don't need to wear a stethoscope to prove that you're a doctor. There's a couple of factual things. Mike Hill was suspended by the Labour Party for what he did, but he was reinstated after they found him sort of not guilty on that one. It's very difficult to be found guilty on these things. But I'm also hearing from Hartlepool Labour Party that they were saying that that the National Labour Party wanted to impose a candidate list, a short list of one. And they said, well, if the short list is going to be of one, it's going to be of the person that we want. So they imposed Paul Williams, and that's what the executive committee, and like, I don't recognise that from what we do. We would never do that. We ask for decisions by the executive committee to be ratified by the all-member meeting. We go and say, this is what we've decided as exec, do you still trust us? You know, it's a funny one. I've also heard someone in Teesside's been suspended for criticising the process as well by the Labour Party. Not suspended, actually, has been expelled from the Labour Party for criticising the process. I don't know the actual details of that one. But say, well, what do you want to do? So I think I'm going to bring in Thomas here, who's sat quietly on all this, heard this stuff, probably not surprised. You wanted to mention the Labour Party, didn't you?
I wanted to mention it in a broader way. I was just sitting with some friends, some young people who joined the party because of Corbyn, or maybe just before, something like that. And they went through 5 years of 3 general elections, 2 referenda, 2 leadership elections, or 3 leadership. I mean, it was a really heavy time. And they found themselves in a situation where some have left the party and some haven't, but they've only just discovered that. And some of them are committing themselves to momentum, and some are not. And they're not, and they're all kind of shocked. And I think it's a microcosm of what's happened to the Labour left generally, which is after the mourning period, there wasn't any time to go, well, okay, what do we do now? On a mass scale, there's a lot of sort of going, we're being attacked. A lot of people going, well, on principle, I'll leave. I'm not going to support a guy like Keith, or I'm going to, or I'm sticking in because that's the commitment I've made. But there's no direction. Now, this week, Momentum released a strategy. And my feeling is, even though I abhor the Labour Party, if you joined it, now's not the time to leave, because people should either leave as one with a strategy and a plan, because that was the reason to join the Labour Party in the first place, was everyone be in one place. That's the only good reason I can see that there was, right? And ideally, people should have done it with eyes wide open, understanding that it's not a great organisation, but it could do some good things, right? It was never great under Corbyn, right? He was a nice person and there was better policies, but fundamentally it remained the same. I live in Manchester. It's a 100% red town. It's corrupt as hell. Labour local politicians are incredibly corrupt. And that's what's losing them in the outskirts of Greater Manchester, because in Manchester you get a churn of people. They come in and go. So people don't pay enough attention. But in Bury, they pay attention. And in Rochdale, they pay attention to Simon Danchuk, who was a greasy, sexist pig. This guy sounds in that mold. He sounds like he was a yes man, probably thick as 2 short planks, because you can't be that bright to be making those kind of public comments. The previous guy sounds potentially in that mold. There's been plenty of other allegations by leadership, right-wing leadership, loyalists, of doing this kind of thing and getting away with it. And Labour has a terrible record on sexism. It has had no female leaders. It was supposed to be an all-women shortlist. Maybe you can make an argument for Clive Lewis as a queer person of colour, but how's it Keith is the bloody leader? Like what fundamentally the party has a problem, and I weirdly would suggest that people need to stay in whilst there's at least a strategy for what to do while staying in, until there's a good strategy to leave altogether. But I would also say that from what I'm hearing, this is unacceptable. Like I just, and it's a hard thing to wallow in. I feel sorry for people who are part of an organization like this, because I don't practically know what you can do. I just can only give my commiserations. It just sounds fucking shit. Sorry to say.
I think all we can do is I think you really hit the nail on the head there about the people who are in there for the right reasons, who want democracy, who want, some people are in the Labour Party simply to help. And I'll take that. I'll take apolitical people joining the Labour Party who really don't particularly care about politics, who aren't like us, who aren't looking at the global scale of things, but they're just like, you know what? If I was in the Labour Party, I can help. I can do something good. And I respect those people. There's some people who are just in there because they want power. That's a different thing. So there are some people, so the yin and yang of that is like someone comes in there and says, right, I'm going to join the Labour Party because I want to help. And at the other end of the spectrum is, I'm going to join the Labour Party because I want to help myself. And there's that. And then you see that on a bigger and bigger scale. I'm interested in like national issues. I want to join the Labour Party to help. I want to join the Labour Party to help myself. And this is the problem that we've got. And for me, there seems to be far, far, far too much power given to people who want to help themselves. Because if you want to give your power away, that is the natural system. That's how to be a socialist for me, which is very close to going full circle, what you described in Anarchy. It's helping. It's a very similar philosophy. It's like, give power to other people. If you've got power, you want to give that power away. You want to share it with people, and you want to empower others. And that's the whole point, surely, like of bringing communities with you. But then you've got some people who just want to take it all for themselves, which is the other type of socialism that you were very critical of in your interview as well, Thomas. So, and I think we all are. Why would someone want to do that? But that seems to be where the Labour Party is at the moment. It's favouring those people who want power over anything. And Laura, I'm going to bring you in on this point because our former MP tweeted something one time, didn't he? He wrote an article. So he had no power whatsoever apart from the power to put in an article in a national newspaper, criticising Jeremy Corbyn and saying it was all his fault, despite the fact that no one in our CLP had any sort of way of describing actually why we lost the seat in Sedgefield, which would be a really interesting programme one time because, ignoring people is not going to win you. But what was remember the thing about power and, yeah?
Yeah, he said, what did he say? Principle, there's no point in principles without power. And I think we replied with, well, what's the point in power without principles?
Yeah.
Genuinely, that, and obviously we were derided for that. I don't think he was our biggest fan. Really, was he?
But you are just a Tory then, aren't you? If you have power without principles, you are just a Tory.
Well, exactly. And I'm sick of hearing it. I'm sick of people just going, well, we need to be electable. We need to get into power. We've got to play the game.
To do what?
Okay, but what are you going to do when you're in power? Just be more of the same. What's the point in that? I'm starting to get to the point now where I think our whole electoral system and our whole system of governing is completely inept and just the wrong system for the people in this country. I don't know what we'd replace it with. But it feels like at the minute we're just dealing with overlords who tell us what to do and don't care about the people who just make their lives easier, like saving their lives and cleaning their streets and cleaning their houses. Those people don't matter.
They should be sackable. They should have minimum wage, and they should only ever get to serve one term. It should be a bit like jury duty. You don't really want to do it. You may as well have to. It's not supposed to be something that you enjoy. You are a servant to people, not vice versa. And
yeah, I mean, I remember when the first time I ever went to Labour Party conference, it was really sort of bewildering. Like, I'd never seen anything like it. And it was 20. Oh God, I can't even remember the year now. It's late.
18, I think.
18. It was the year I went, and it was really scary because it was the year they decided to have the women's conference immediately before. So we were at women's conference, and there was something I really, really, really wanted to say. So I was like this for the whole conference, and I never got to speak. So come to full conference, thousands of people, I was like, right, I've got something to say on this. And it was the first topic, and it was the first time people were getting up. So I was like, if I just stick my hand up, I might be like 3 hours, but I don't care. So stick my hand up. And then they were like, yep. I was like, oh shit, I'm not ready. I haven't written anything down yet. Oh no. And it was about open selection. And it was about how, God, I think my main point was that being an MP or even a CLP officer or whatever isn't about status, and it shouldn't be about being a career choice. It should be public service. It should be something you're doing to help people that you are privileged enough to be elected into. People have placed their trust in you. It's not a job. It's not your career path. But unfortunately, we're in a society now and this political system where I only know a handful of people who are past council level who really want to make a difference and don't see it as a career. Most people are doing it for self-serving reasons, unfortunately.
Was that the time that Phil Wilson shouted at you at the end of a meeting after shouting at Barbara, or was that? No, that wasn't. Sorry.
Conference.
No, when he shouted at you after the meeting, that was because you went on Radio 5 Live and he blocked you from going on Radio 5 Live.
Radio 5, Radio 5 asked me to go on and talk about my position on Brexit, and then Phil got wind of it and made sure it didn't happen, and then shouted at me in the middle of a political education event on women's oppression and violence against women.
Yeah, it was violence against women. He came in 45 minutes late, muttering, sat down, next to our secretary Barbara, who I believe she was in her 60s at the time, and started shouting at her while the political education was going on. Kicked down a sign that said Hope 3 times. We kept on propping it up and he kept on kicking it down, this sign that said Hope. And then I think he did that by accident, but it is a funny part of the story. And then shouted at Laura at the end for considering going on 5 Live to talk about Brexit, and he got her kicked off. So it's not new to us in Sedgefield, this stuff. It's nice to be able to say that actually out loud. It's quite nice. So
quite liberating, isn't it?
Yeah. So I realise it's getting quite late, and we could go on. I think this discussion could go on forever. I literally could, because there's so many important points to be made. But I'm just thinking, well, the point was, what can we do to challenge the media? So closing thoughts from everyone. I think we should wrap this up after just mentioning a few comments. Kat thinks that's also hilarious and also awful. What do we think about PR? PR, yeah, I think it would probably be better personally. Anyone? Just a yes or no? PR better or worse, I guess?
Can I go with depends?
It's the only way that Labour are going to see power in the 21st century.
Charlotte?
That's the only way.
I don't like it for a lot of reasons, but I feel like I have to agree on that point that we're kind of stuck without it.
Yeah. You're going to have to form a coalition with the Lib Dems, the Greens and the SNP, and maybe Plaid Cymru. Stand down. Labour needs to stop running candidates in every constituency. Stand down in 100. Give them to the other parties on the provision that you'll get PR. And what's good is there will be a progressive majority running the country for most of the rest of the next century, but it will not be a Labour progressive majority.
Other comments are Laura for Sedgefield. Yeah, that'd be good. I don't know how interested you are, but that'd be good. And I think you'd be excellent at it. Although I don't really want you to do it because I want to enjoy our life. It's a big one. It'll be a sacrifice, but you'll be a good person to do it. Chris Hood's asked me whether there's this is a problem locally as well about people wanting power. I certainly think that there are some people who are in the Labour Party in County Durham, and I'm not saying this is people who are county councillors or whatever or any specific individuals, but I have met people who in any other county would be Tories if that was the best way to get elected. And I've certainly seen that. There's certainly people who seem to have very little knowledge of the Labour Party. And that sometimes, as I said earlier on, that can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. If you just want to help and you're like, well, I want to be elected so that I can help, and you go and help, then that's okay, because local politics, a lot of the time, it's not that political, is it? It should be, but a lot of the time it isn't. But then if the other thing is like, I only want to do that because I want to be elected so I have some power, and you don't want to help, then that's a problem. And I think that's it for the comments. So closing things, what do we need to do for the media? What would be, if you had like one wish, what would it be for socialist media or anarchist media or independent media that tells the truth rather than tries to, subvert everything you're doing and support the establishment? I suppose anti-establishment media, we'll call it. Thomas, you go first.
Well, I would encourage everyone to support either the ima.press, and get on the mailing list there to find out what we got coming down the line, or the Media Reform Coalition, or both. The one thing I'd like to see, I tell you, the one thing I'd like to see is that we start to treat media as a society as a public good. A public good like we treat healthcare and education. For all that healthcare and education is attacked, at least there is a universal conception that is a good thing, right? But that's not the case with media. Yet it is fundamental to the functioning of any kind of democratic society, any form of democracy. If I could have one wish, it would be that everyone saw value in it. Because until we see value in it, we're not going to create the changes that I'm working on across the board. And trust has fallen out of the media, especially with the BBC. We've never seen a lack of trust, a drop in trust with the BBC as we've seen post 2019 from the left, 20% into negative points. Trust has rightly disappeared from the media, but there hasn't been like a value put on it. And we need to fight for it the same as we need to fight for healthcare and water and education and housing and food for everyone. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Charlotte?
I guess if I could wave a magic wand and have one wish, it would just be to have loads of money, so we didn't have to worry about money all the time, and that would certainly help us overcome a lot of the immediate problems. But more broadly, I would really like to see an independent left-wing media that everybody on the left feels that they have a bit of a stake in, that they feel like it's theirs, like it's our media. And I'm really glad that Laura and Paul have set up this podcast, because since I stumbled into the Labour Party about however long, 6 years ago, there's two of the very best people I've met in the Labour Party, like two of the people who I just think like, damn, these people have got integrity, like they just do not disappoint. And I'm really glad that you've started this, and I want everyone to be able to feel that they are able to contribute to left media, even set it up, like, or even just, support it in their own way and feed into it, because that's what it should be. It should be democratic, it should be decentralized. Everyone should have the power to create the media as well as to consume it. And I think there's been a lot of flourishing in left media since Corbyn. I think that has been a massive catalyst for change. But I think there's a lot more to be done to ground that left media in everybody's day-to-day lives, and to make us feel like, that is our media. And I think that will really help us get our message out there and create everyone into enthusiastic and individually powerful spreaders of left media.
Thanks, Charlotte. And I'm going a bit red and I'm not turning into a gammon, so don't worry. But thank you so much. It means a lot, and I do remember as well that this really needs to be said at early meetings that we had, and it was Jeremy Corbyn for leader and stuff there. You sitting there as a 16-year-old and making speeches that were absolutely powerful and incredible, and me as a teacher thinking that person can teach me something that was inspirational, and it's all part of the movement. It's all part of the same thing. You know, we should be able to be inspired by one another, and I think that's been one of the really good things that's come out of everything. You know, people are upset in the Labour Party at the moment, but we mustn't forget the good as well, and the people it's brought together. So thank you as well, personally, for that, because I still remember that meeting when you were like just absolutely incredible, and I was like, yes. Laura.
Yeah, I remember that meeting too. It did out for my imposter syndrome. I was like, oh my God, she's 16. She's really clever. She's really pretty. This is horrendous. But she turned out to be a really lovely person. So, yeah.
Isn't that kind of worse? I hate it when they're lovely as well. Like, it's like, you can't be talented and good at everything.
Still waiting to find something I don't like about that.
Can you be a shit, please? You dickhole.
I guess if I suppose my wishes really are an amalgamation of both of them. If I can wave my magic wand and get an actual wish, it might as well be unrealistic. And so what I'd wish for is that the 4 billionaires who run all of our media somehow either had a change in conscience, or our government changed theirs and forced them to make all of their media outlets cooperatives, and everything had to be owned and run by people who were interested and had something to say, and you could be a member and have a say and help make it, so that the stuff we're trying to do and all the other left-wing media, that could go out on these huge platforms that are being just being taken over by a tiny amount of people and their opinions and what they think. That would be my wish, if we could do it, as unrealistic as that is.
I'm going to go for a really realistic wish, and I think that is for socialist media to support one another, and whether that's like just or anti-establishment media to support one another. And also, I think what's really important is, if anyone was mentioned about like other people starting things up, if anyone ever wants any help, and if anyone wanted to have some support, we can offer it. Like we do things with 4 incredibly hard working people, which brings me to the last point is don't just try and follow someone else's establishment model. Don't think that media has to be like, oh, here I am, I'm wearing a suit and I'm going to chat about this and I am going to tell you things. You don't have to do that. Get involved, do something different. Charlotte mentioned like how she's really glad that we set this up. We'd be nothing without James and Rochelle. I would say Rob as well, but he's probably still typing. So that's a really in joke. But like James and Rochelle are absolutely outstanding. You know, the show wouldn't look like this without them. We wouldn't have the support that we need. And a lot of people I know, like particularly James, doesn't get a lot of credit for what he does because he's from an unconventional background and he's absolutely outstanding at what he does. So give people the opportunity to do something special, because there are a lot of good people out there, a lot of incredible people out there. So that would be my wish, if people just like stopped trying to emulate a crap system. And I would say that that could go outside of the media as well. That could be like, why in the world does the Labour Party or any political party organise exactly in the same way? Why do you have these ridiculous structures where you've got right through the chair and all that kind of really boring stuff? You don't have to, there isn't a set system in humanity. You don't have to do things a certain way. You can do things completely differently. So be a bit creative and don't just follow people. That would be my wish. I think things will be a lot better because the establishment have got that stitched. So
yeah, and a bunch of shits.
I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, I just had to stick it in to solidify my anarchist credentials. It's easy to be a shit in a shit system. It's harder to be a decent person in a shit system. But here's what amazes me is the majority of people are decent. The NHS is the third biggest single organization in the world. Over 1 million people work in an organizations dedicated to looking after people's health. Same with education, other things like that. The majority of people working in are essential workers, and they do things to help other people all day, every day. It's their stories that aren't told, and that's really the media that we need for the future. It's the one that tells the stories of great people every day.
Yeah, not the royal family. That's
not
interesting.
I mean, no, look, let's not pretend it's not a little bit interesting. Like, it is. I hate it. Like, look, they could all, have you ever read The Queen and I by Sue Townsend? She puts them all on a council estate. Republicans take over government, and then they all go on a council estate in Loughborough. And it's good fun because, they're knobs, and it's more than they deserve. But, they are quite fun in their own weird way.
They are. They also okay. It'd be news if they did get rid of them. But anyway, right. So I'm gonna say goodbye there. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Thank you so much for commenting, because that is an absolutely essential part of what's going on here. The fact that you comment, your comments are on there the entire time. Become a member of Socialist Think Tank, whether you want to contribute or not. We want you to be part of what we're doing, because there's so much that we can offer together, and there's so much we can do, and also contribute. Is there a way to become so we'll just finish off, because I've done the Socialist Think Tank thing. Shall we do Red Pepper and Independent Media Association? That should be so easy.
IMA. I mean, we tried to make it sound like official. It's essentially a trade union for independent media, right? But we try to make it sound like something that when we start slagging off the BBC, which we will be doing, and other bodies, that they have to report something that sounds really dead official. But it's really just it's a cooperative, by the way. It's it's not just me, and it's something you can become a member of. But it is largely like a bunch of shit rakers causing some trouble, but we sound nice.
Okay, and what about Red Pepper? How do we do that? How do we go about supporting Red Pepper?
Please subscribe to the magazine. It's on our website. I don't think I have the ability to drop that in the chat, but please subscribe to Red Pepper. Thank you so much.
Normally
guys.
Someone obliges. Normally someone does that for us.
Yeah.
Good
Class.
people. And Laura, final comments.
On what? I'm sorry
Whatever
I'm so
you
late.
want.
I'm sorry I'm really late.
We missed you.
If you want to subscribe to the stuff that I'm involved in, please become a member of Socialist Think Tank. You get behind the scenes footage, which you can laugh at. Normally laughing at us messing up. Also, the Women's Banner Group are doing some really, really important work at the minute. We've been out today. I'm not allowed to tell you what we've been doing yet, but it was really important, really special and exhausting. So hence this. To become a member of the Women's Banner Group, all you have to do literally is get on our mailing list. We don't charge you anything. We don't ask you for anything. We just tell you what we're doing. If you want to get involved, you can. If you've got any ideas that you want us to take on, you can do that too. It's all about working together. And Political Education Project is coming up. The Socialist Sunday School is back again next Sunday, the 28th. Keep an eye out for that. It is all about women's oppression. There's a fantastic lady called Laura Nell who's going to be speaking on that. That is just my name spelled wrong. So yeah, it's going really well. There's a lot of stuff to get involved in. Find all your socialist outlets and follow them.
Yeah, that's when you get associated with a group. That's what happens when you get associated with a group.
Yeah.
Good old Laura Nell. Right, thank you so much, everyone. See you later. And we'll call it there.
Bye.